Alright, welcome back to Nick Lenz's Comic Corner Classic / Non-Classic. This episode number 1418 and number 1312. Yeah, it was actually 1311 last time. My mistake. Okay. Alright, so basically with this one, first we're starting off with the final trade of Superwoman. This is Volume 3, The Midnight Hour. Great title. Yeah, and then the storyline is called Midnight. Though this one is the last one to talk about for this particular trade series. Why? Because the last 18 issues. I'll discuss that in a minute. Now, this particular storyline, of course, deals about Kate Perkins. The artwork is mostly done by, if I can move this damn thing. Come on. Let's see. The artwork is done by Steven Savaya, Sam Passari, Federico Del Curio, and Max Reiner. The cover is done by Tom Mori, who I believe was an inker, and Imaria Lebacayu. Now, Midnight is just a character who basically, now, I find the comics was only in just the opening issue of this trade, and then he disappears until like the last couple issues. Yeah, he's absent for issues because, well, Midnight here, like Midnight itself. Yes. So, Lana starts off fighting this creature. Also, throughout this whole storyline, Lana doesn't have her powers. So, she's fighting to get her powers back. And also with the character Midnight, which she just reformed at the end of the storyline. And she later gets out of whatever dimension she's in. She fights her for a few issues. And Bizarre Lois is there too. Yeah. So you can kind of say while reading this is simply put the end of Superwoman. It's basically written up this whole storyline. This even have flashbacks to when Lana first met Lex when they were in high school, which he had hair. Yes, Lex Luthor had freaking hair. But the way he's drawn here, he kind of reminds you of Julian Glover from Smallville. The TV show Smallville. And also, we have Clark getting attention on purpose because Lana got attention because she got into an argument with Lex. And then she skipped attention, and of course, then it kind of basically starts a thing where basically Clark is worried about her, and she makes out with him. And apparently the red kryptonite around her neck basically causes him to be sick. Now, this is actually a nod to the TV show. Yes. Why, you might ask? Because Lana TV show did the same thing, where she wore a necklace with kryptonite on it. Though that one was green kryptonite, this is red kryptonite. It's very similar. So, I'm sure Kate Perkins himself must have been a fan of Smallville, so he basically had this little nod here for him doing that. Though here's the thing. Whenever Clark made out with Lana in this show, she never wore the necklace. Basically, he got sick around it, but he never actually did, because he actually took it off when they were started dating. Briefly. And, of course, then we also get the appearance by Supergirl. Because, of course, you have Supergirl, and plus, I love this costume. This is the Rebirth costume. Not the costumes you have Mark Andrego to go with the book. Oh, no, this is a completely different costume. Oh, yeah, and one thing neat about this storyline, we have a guest appearance by frickin' Maxima. Though, I should point out, there are two Maximas here. This Maxima you see here, on this page here, believe it or not, that is what she looked like pre-Flashpoint. The one in the tube, the one right here, that is actually post-Flashpoint Maxima. Yeah, I'm not really sure what was the purpose of this. Two Maximas. I mean, looking at her, if you look at pictures of her, this is the way she dressed. And she had that cape too. Post-Flashpoint, they mentioned about the Crucible in here, which was the final story of Supergirl's run. Yep. Which is great, though, the fact they bring up here. And they deal with that, all the remaining issues of this run. And, of course, deal with the character Midnight. And, of course, Arena with Lois, which is really good. Here's what Midnight looks like. Basically, Midnight is a robot who basically does a new threat introduced just for these last few issues of the series. We also have this magical girl show up. Who is this magical girl? Tracy 13, the daughter of Dr. Terrence 13. Yep, she's in the series. Well, for the last few issues. And, well, yeah, and the whole storyline with Midnight, that takes the last few issues of the series before she finally gets out of the dimension Midnight's in. And they briefly have contact with Lena Luthor, which that's interesting. Yeah, Lena Luthor. The one who caused the very first story arc of the series, because why not? She was in the jail on aircraft care all this time. Yep. And pretty much they just basically kind of wrap the series up there, and of course they reform her. Also, I love the final issue cover. It's a clear nod to the very first issue cover, which that's actually really good. The fact you have, well, that as the final issue cover. Yep. And, well, everything kind of wraps up. Midnight's still kind of around. And apparently, there's this little girl who's a big fan of hers. She gets her autograph. And she's like, Mom, I just met my hero. Yep. I'm not sure she becomes a reporter. That'd be interesting. Of course, Midnight stays there. She kind of, in a way, merges with Lana to keep her powers. And that's the series for you. Yep. It's definitely a good series. I have heard the reason why this series ended. Why it ended after 18 issues. Low sales. Some people said that the series kind of, in a way, was not really the same after Phil Jimenez left the book with issue number 8. That was his last issue for the book. But, yeah, that was the reason why it ended. Low sales. And apparently, New Superman beat this series in the sales. But you know what the strange thing is? 6 issues after this series ended, New Superman ended. That book, I did not really understand what was the purpose of ending that book. That book was good. Really good. Superwoman herself, basically, this book I thought was really good. Phil Jimenez himself did a fantastic job with this book. And, of course, I think Kate Perkins did a good job with the book. Mostly, anyways, I did like the idea of Atomic Skull Trinity becoming a good guy. That was a really original idea. Because a lot of people accuse DC just rehashing old stuff. Atomic Skull become a good guy. That is a complete original idea. Which I thought was a really cool idea. Something they did spread out over the course of the next several issues. It seems as though this wasn't going much anywhere. And this wasn't really brought up in the main book. And Lex himself pretty much was written out the series after issue number 8. He never appeared in the series ever. Well, I think he appeared once in the series after that, but he wasn't, let's say, a regular supporting character after that. Mostly, it was just Steel and Natasha as regular supporting characters throughout the remainder of the series under Kate Perkins. It almost seems as though when the series, I don't think anybody noticed the series ended. It just ended. It's sort of ended due to low sales. At least DC announced the series ending due to low sales. Yep. But is it a terrible series? Not really, no. It's a really good series. I thoroughly enjoy it. Basically, in a way, the best way to describe Superwoman, it's a love letter to Superman stuff from the 1990s. That's the best way to describe it. Alright, moving on to the final trade for Suicide Squad. Well, it's the final trade for Suicide Squad Volume 5. That's me by finale. This is Suicide Squad Volume 8, Constriction. Now, this book is quite unique when it comes to issues in the book. It collects 41 to 44, 46 to 50 of Suicide Squad Volume 5, and the annual. If you're curious, though, where the heck are 46 and 45 46? That is part of the Sync Atlantis story. They actually reference that in here. Most important for these issues, this is kind of the... basically, Rob Williams was the writer of this book at this point. He is basically wrapping up this particular series. And the one thing you notice, though, by the time you get this book, one thing, Enchantress is nowhere to be seen. And they also kind of have it where, well, Rick Flag is kind of himself writing himself out of the series in the way, I don't know if intentionally, whatever. But mostly put, we also have it where, well, so we have Rick Flag, Captain Boomerang himself leaving the squad finally. And the very first 2 issues, Constriction, it's mostly put a follow-up to what happened in the pages. I think it was Batman. No, it was actually. I think it was Batman Superman. I think it was. Actually, it was Deadshot Cobra Cult. That was mostly what was a follow-up to. Where at the end of the storyline, see, Deadshot's daughter was kidnapped by Cobra, and throughout this whole time, him and Batman working together. So, they do, in fact, rescue his daughter, which I thought was a little girl. No, she's basically like a 20-year-old. Which is interesting because I think for a lot of people, basically, because a lot of characters who had kids pre-Flashpoint were simply just wiped out of existence. Surprisingly, only 2 managed to survive the relaunch. Deadshot, which is a bit of a surprise, and, of course, Animal-Man. Animal-Man was part of his character, so it basically was not unexpected, the fact that he kept his family, his whole family, all his 2 kids and his wife, his beautiful wife, Ellen. Deadshot, on the other hand, There's no mention of his son, Eddie. Yeah, there's no mention of his son, Eddie, but they kept his daughter in, Zoe, which one of the best aspects about Deadshot is that he's a father. Yep. And simply put, they pretty much have this whole storyline pretty much go on from issues 41 to about 44, which is, yeah, actually it wraps up 43. But yeah, it's a really good opening story arc. And of course, if you weren't, this is actually before, I think it was issue 994 of Detective. Yeah, Batman's still wearing his Rebirth costume. The costume designed by, well, you might think it's a Rebirth costume, but technically this costume made his debut back in Batman 50 of the previous one for this series. This costume was designed by Greg Capullo. Yep, Greg Capullo designed this costume. And people think, oh, this costume first showed up in Rebirth. Maybe it was Tony S. Daniel who designed it. Nope, it was not Tony S. Daniel. It was Greg Capullo. Yeah, I pointed out several videos that it's because people think this costume first showed up when Rebirth happened. It was just prior to Rebirth in Batman 50, which was actually Scott Snyder's last issue. It was the second last issue he wrote for the book because 52 was not written by him. 51 was. And so they break him out of prison. Of course, Katana is there. Even though that a lot of people like myself question why the heck she's even included by the Suicide Squad. Well, editorial probably had the demand for that because she was in the movie, even though she's had no association with the Suicide Squad in the past. The rest of the characters, no problem, but her, no. She had no business being there. Oh, by the way, here's something you might find interesting though. Once this volume ended, she was back to the Outsiders. Yep, she back to the Outsiders. And so, Amanda Waller sends these five people to go after Batman Deadshot. She sends Harley Quinn, Captain Boomerang, and Captain Cold. Yes, Captain Cold has joined the roster, which that's interesting. Yes. I think this is a great idea. Because Captain Cold... Now, you're probably thinking, like, has Captain Cold ever been part of the Suicide Squad? The answer is yes. He has. He joined for a handful of issues of the very first volume for the series by John Ostrander. He put him in the series. He put the freaking Penguin as part of the Suicide Squad. Yes, the Penguin, a notorious Batman villain, as part of the Suicide Squad. Captain Cold was quite interesting, to say the least. Boomerang has always been associated with the Suicide Squad, so not surprising. But in the case of Captain Cold, it's great. I thought this was a really good idea. I love this idea. This lineup itself only lasts just as one story arc, and then they kind of in the way switched up a bit. Oddly enough, for some reason, Killer Croc is not in this storyline. Nope, he is nowhere to be seen. Yep. And they wrap this up after just a few issues. I think it was 4 issues. Let's take a look. I think it was part 3, I think it was. Yeah, just a 4. Yeah, wraps up issue 44. Now, next came the annual, which took place during the same time as the... Excuse me. St. Atlantis Run. This construction arc was really good. I love the fact they wrapped up loose end from miniseries. And it was just purely fantastic. Yep. The annual itself had a very unique lineup when it comes to Suicide Squad for this one-shot mission. My only guess is the reason Rob Williams did this, because the first time it had a crossover annual, a special between Doom Patrol and the Suicide Squad, which did this a series of like a brief one-shot mission for these characters. Now, who joins this lineup? Well, because of the fact the main team is Barbara St. Atlantis, she recruits Merlin, as in Maka Merlin, Ragdoll, Baby Boom, Scorpedo, Shimmer, yes, Shimmer from the Fearsome Five, Tad Jones, and Scream Queen. Now, Scream Queen, that's interesting though, because she's actually a hero. Yes. I gotta say, not bad line for the Suicide Squad, but all these characters are technically all villains, except for Scream Queen, because she's a vampire. Yeah, she's part of that New Blood stuff. She even had a brief one-shot crossover with, teamed up with Catwoman. Not really sure why she's still part of the Suicide Squad. And heck, we have a guest appearance by frickin' Swamp Thing. Yes, Swamp Thing. And they just basically just did this, and they just, well, it's a very interesting annual that had a very weird ending to it that really makes no sense at all. Where, like, they kind of, in the way, they failed the mission, and what does Waller do? Kill Scream Queen. But does Rob Williams forget, though, that cannot technically kill a vampire? A bomb tag cannot. It's, though I'm not going to show, it is graphic. Oh my gosh. So she's trying to eat her meal, and Swamp Thing shows up. Just, yeah. So despite the fact he threatens her, he's like, nah, I'm not really threatened by you. And, well, the ending itself is not done by Rob Williams. It's done by Colin Bunn. Yes. And then we have the final story arc of this run. The last 4 issues of this run. Where you have Captain Boomerang. Yes, there's a standalone issue involving him. Apparently he was part of... They say he was part of the Australian Secret Service. Well, that technically is true. That's true. It's a pre-Flashpoint, so that's a good nod set. It's a good James Myers issue. And here's something you might find interesting, though. We have the first post-Flash appearance of Owen Mercer. If you don't know who this guy is, he's the second Captain Boomerang. And his father is the original Captain Boomerang. Now, pre-Flashpoint, his mom was the mother of Bart Allen. As in, the daughter of the Flash. So basically, they kind of meant that Owen Mercer was a distant relative of the Flash, which made him kind of, in the way, a grandchild of the Flash. Because the time travel was... And plus, he was a speedster. Yeah, that's the thing about Owen Mercer. He was a speedster. And here, he's not a speedster. He's just basically a guy who just happened to be Digger Harkness' son. There's a bit of time travel stuff, which is interesting. Apparently, he force fields. And he does save his son. And, well, that's it. And then we have the last few issues being just Rocket the Rush. And the last 3 issues of the series. We have the return of Peanut. Yeah, I haven't seen this guy in a while. He's just a robot who speaks in, like, various different things. So, this whole story arc basically involves what is left of the Suicide Squad, which is basically Rick Flag, Katana, Killer Croc, Deadshot, Harley Quinn. Pretty much anybody who's left in the team at this point just goes on this one mission to Russia for the last few issues of this run. And it does have, like, basically they're there just rescuing Amanda Waller from being held captive. Yep. And, well... And they also have people known as the Vets, basically dead, like, zombies who apparently work for Waller too. May have a guy named Lundy, Peters, Gira, and Jones, which is interesting to say the least. Yeah, just another, like, zombie as Suicide Squad. And, well, kind of in the way of saving the world. And, of course, you have Waller becoming this, which is interesting. Yeah. Very interesting way to end this particular run with this okay 3-parter. Yep. Yeah. The thing ends with basically... It looked like, though, that Rick Flag apparently turned on the Suicide Squad. Or actually killed the zombies. And... Says no only Suicide Squad, apparently he can, no problem. Yep. But in the case of this particular trade, I'm going to give it roughly a... I'm going to give it a 9.5 out of 10. Final thoughts on Suicide Squad Volume 5. Wow, this run. This run itself, basically, if you love the John Ostrander run for Suicide Squad that lasted from 1987 to 1992, you would love this run because basically Rob Williams, he must have been a big fan of that run because it basically is done in the style of John Ostrander. The only difference is that we don't have Amanda Waller, Calvin Cap, Boomerang, Boomer Butt. He did write a one-shot called War Crimes. Yep. Though interesting though, why the heck they saved the annual toward the end of the run, which is quite interesting. Excuse me. Also, what was the point of ending the series if you can bring it back later on in the year? Yeah, this is something interesting though. They end this series the very same month they had Green Arrow. Yeah. That one I kind of get the reason for because of all of discontinuity, don't figure change the writers. This book had one writer for 50 issues. This book was really good. The lineup was mostly good, except for two characters who had no business being there, Katana and Killer Croc. Yes, these two had no business part of the Suicide Squad. My only guess is the reason Rob Williams had to include these two, because editorial mandate, and plus, they were in the damn movie. Yep, I mean, I get Waller, Rick Flag being there, which that was basically a good bonus on the part of the writer throwing him in, because he was mysteriously absent from the New 52 run. Yeah, no reason why he was not there. And plus, they made Amanda Waller chubby again. Unexpectedly, of course, because they threw in the Rebirth one-shot. Because they came right after the end of the new Suicide Squad series, which is issue 22. They threw in that. We have Amanda Waller skinny, hot, and then here she's like back to the pre-Flashpoint Amanda Waller, the version people will like. I have never had anybody like. I thought it was quite interesting though. Like at first you have a skinny Waller, and obviously she's back being chubby again. Well, they just do eat a bunch of donuts and basically put on like 50 pounds. Who knows? Yes, though, did that problem with Chances Brown Lamb? Not really, no. They also had a character named Hack join the team for several issues. She was a very interesting character. And plus, she was a big Harley Quinn fan. I thought she was great. I love some stuff that the character included in here. Though one character I kind of felt this though felt more bad part of the scoop, which was basically King Shark. But no, they had to go with the movie lineup. Except they didn't have El Diablo part of this group. Well, briefly anyways. He went off to do his own thing. Yep. This series was good. This one was really good. And surprisingly, we had a spin-off series. Yeah, a couple spin-offs during this whole time. We had Suicide Squad Black Files, which was quite interesting. I loved it. Heck, we even had a team-up series with the Justice League, where Justice League versus Suicide Squad basically nod to the old classic storyline I had back in the 80s, which was great. And the whole point of that particular miniseries was to help set up the Just Like America series, though some ramifications of that book did spill into Suicide Squad, but not freaking Justice League. Oh no, Hit just basically ignored this book. Yeah, they didn't bring up whatever happened in this book, he just ignored it. Though for some reason they had Jarmia Jr. take over the artwork for several issues and bring in the character, I think it was known as the Ration, I think his name is. Yeah, he was a new character, part of the original Suicide Squad. I like all the interesting ideas that Rob Williams have this book, and thoroughly explored every single detail. Heck, they brought back Rick Flag's father, and they brought back Grace, the one who was the doctor for the original run for Suicide Squad back in the 80s, which was great to bring her in. Except they made her basically the girlfriend of Rick Flag's father, which that was interesting to say the least. Yes, though no mention of Rick Flag's son, Rick Flag Jr.'s son, no mention of him at all. Those was interesting though. They had apparently Rick Flag all this time at this other time. Apparently he was held in Guantanamo Bay for some reason. Yep. But this one was really good. I never thought any of the issues were bad, though I thought was quite strange. The only artist I kind of thought this though really was necessary for this whole run was John Romita Jr. coming out for one story arc. His artwork felt very unnecessary. I don't hate him as an artist per se. It's just that he didn't fit the Suicide Squad group. He's more dark ass stuff, more like independent, so like Kick-Ass. Not Suicide Squad. He fit Batman perfectly fine, but not Suicide Squad. That was quite strange. Yeah, and the fact that, well, the whole idea of crossing with Aquaman, that was quite strange. Yes, there was no real reason for it at all. Just basically Bilbo was going to Aquaman at that point. Though the thing is, with that storyline, that I think actually ended Dan Abnett's run for Aquaman. Like, that storyline wrapped up. That pretty much wrapped up his run for the book. Though in the case of Suicide Squad, and this is quite interesting though, like, Dan Abnett's run ended with that particular crossover, and from Suicide Squad perspective, that ended the series. And then they brought it back, and then they canceled it on like 11 issues. They did in fact collect the whole run in one trade called Suicide Squad Black, but I will eventually get that. I'll probably get that soon, either in physical or digital form. Okay? So yeah, that's it for Physical Review. Next one, another comic corner, this time 2 physical ones. And both of them finales. Yep, you'll find out what they are next. Okay, next video. Bye.